Thanks, everyone. All right, let's get started. So first things first, let me introduce myself. I'm Pierre Rossi, as my gracious anchorman just said. I'm French. I started working with Qt in 2009. First at Nokia right after the acquisition. Started in support, so some of the long-time customers around you might have dealt with me because I spent like 2 years as a dedicated support engineer, answering all your little worries and problems and trying to help out as much as I could. And then I moved to the QtWebEngine team back then into development. So that was quite exciting at the time. Within Nokia, we were trying to do lots of things with WebKit. Then things changed again. I moved to Digia, still working on QtWebKit, and with the more recent changes in WebKit upstream WebKit development, I moved to the QtWebEngine team. So I've been changing business cards a lot, and I feel really bad for that, because this is now like the fourth time or something, that new set of business cards that I don't run through. I'm based in Oslo. I really enjoy it. It's a nice little city, nice little country. It's very, very pleasant. I enjoy working on open source software for a day job. I think I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to work on such high quality code bases out there in the open, interacting with other people. So this is really something that drew me in the first place to go work on Qt, and now even more like on WebKit and Chromium. And some fun facts about me: I love to cook and I love to climb. So cooking is something that's really handy in Oslo, where the prices of everything are just outrageous. And climbing is also something that works quite well because there are mountains, there's ice climbing in the winter, so quite happy with that. So this is a picture from earlier last month, above Chamonix in l'Envers des Aiguilles, and at the time, I was literally thinking, what are we doing here? But, you know, around that time, when I was like on vacation, when I had a bit of idle time, I was already like thinking about that talk, what I was going to talk about. We only have one talk about QtWebEngine for the whole event, Dev Days. So, and I had a lot that I wanted to say. So I really had to think about, okay, what do I really want to talk? What really matters? So I tried to come up with something. I hope you're going to be pleased with that. So first thing, this is something I get from watching too many TV series. If you haven't been there last year, where I had a talk about QtWebEngine at the time, I'm going to do a quick recap. You know what happened earlier. So basically, we had QtWebKit. That was great. That was a good story. We were happy with it. Lots of things changed. You can see for the longer version the talk from last year, but basically lots of things changed, and then the big change was that Chromium decided to fork off WebKit and start their own thing and just care about their own Chromium browser. So we really had to consider our stakes, like the stakes for us at the time with the cross-platform story, and it was actually an opportunity to maybe change the approach and take a new approach. So last year I introduced what we had, which was roughly after 6 months of work, but not like a big team, because we started with like a really, really tiny team doing a bit of prototyping before involving a bit more people. So it was promising, but it was still highly experimental. I had a small room, I remember, somewhere in a corner, and it was quite crowded actually compared to what I expected. And I tried to give people the will to maybe try it out, but still it was experimental and not something we could just put in every hand. I was a bit quick and I have to apologize for that, I was a bit quick to brag about the fact that we would have it for 5.3. And it turned out like 5.3 was a really short release cycle focusing on stability, performance. So it was really tight for us, and like we had to make it right, get it right. So we couldn't realistically like cram it into 5.3 and release something half-baked for first release. That was not the right thing to do. So now finally with 5.4, our first official release. So yeah, back then we focused also on embedded. We had other things to do. So now we're confident finally that we can put this in every hand. So winter is coming, but 1.0 is coming as well. So there you have it. So how I want to put things together. I want to start with an overview of QtWebEngine, the module and the product, and what it does, what it can do for you, and how you can use it. Then the second part will probably be the meat of it. I want to convince you of the technical merits of QtWebEngine, why we've done things that way, and why it matters for you in a context of Qt. So we'll go a bit in depth on the graphical aspects. Something I like to do. Can you do quickly by a show of hands? So who here is a developer, like works with code and is comfortable reading code? Excellent, majority. All right, and then I'll try my luck at giving you a forecast of the things to come soon and later. Fun fact about Norway: ever since I moved, my expectations with the weather forecast dropped dramatically, and that is because for some reason, I don't know if it has to do with the latitude or something, but for some reason it tends to be very inaccurate sometimes. So I hope it doesn't affect my ability to give a forecast of things to come, but I'm starting to question it after last year. So the overview, as in what does it do for you? And the question I'd like to ask, or we should ask ourselves, is really like, who needs a web engine? And also, incidentally, who doesn't need a web engine? And Lars was presenting things in his keynote, so this is going to be building on that. The main mission that we have with QtWebEngine is to integrate web contents in an application. And we've seen the need coming from the industry. People more and more want to sometimes build a platform, and you need to make it richer, make it more appealing, and then you need content on your platform. And the content tends to come in the form of web applications or websites. It's like typically third-party content. So this is something that we want to make possible and easy and working well. We're not trying to do a web runtime, and by that I mean we're not trying to be PhoneGap. So it is possible, and it's been done by lots of people, and actually in the Nokia times it was advertised quite a bit. It is possible to make your UI with HTML and CSS and web technologies. This is not our primary focus. We believe that QtQuick is, the technology of choice for making UIs, making nice UIs that really work on big screens, perform, work cross-platform. So we're not trying to compete with ourselves. What we are trying to do is really like embed web content into your Qt application, widgets or QtQuick, but like allow this particular use case and allow interaction there. And then there's the question that we also had to ask ourselves in the beginning, and that is starting to be addressed now. Is there already one on the platform? Because like if you're the platform, if you're making an embedded device and that's it, like you're making the whole thing, there is no platform. But if we're talking about mobile, like iOS and Android, there is typically, so as Lars mentioned in his keynote, there is typically already an API offering there for a web view. And do we really want to reinvent the wheel? And also, for the application developer, does it make sense to ship a huge bloated application that replicates to a big extent the functionality that is already available on the platform? So that's why we're not going on mobile platforms with QtWebEngine, and that's why there's the web view, the simple web view module. for that particular use case. So the ideal scenario, when we were looking at Chrome, it's one of the leading browsers out there. It has surprisingly little Chrome. If you look at the UI, it's very clean. So the Chrome in the browser is this part with the address bar, typically a few controls and everything. But it's still too much for us. What we were really interested in is the web rendering capabilities. So what we wanted was just basically Chrome minus the Chrome. Just take the web contents and offer an integration with Qt applications, both in the sense of the graphical aspects and the ability to interact with the web contents. So, little break, complexity break. This is a little specificity of QtWebEngine, and it was one of QtWebKit as well, compared to pretty much any other Qt module out there. Most of the code we ship is not coming from us. We didn't write it. We're actually not writing it because it's a very alive code base, and we're really working on the integration front there. So this is the amount of lines of code. So you can see it's about 9 million lines of code. This is not Chromium as a whole. It's just the submodule that we have, where we already took out most of the Chrome layer and a lot of things, so it's stripped. And it's still 9 million lines of code. You have to keep the figure in mind. It's pretty humongous. The estimate actually on the on the value of the code base, I would say, is very, very conservative. It's quite the underestimation, I think. So it's a tremendous, it's a code base of tremendous quality. There are lots of really smart people in a variety of companies that has worked and is working on it. And so, yeah, we have a responsibility to make it perform, because all the work that's been done above, I mean, it would be a waste. So most of our work is actually not that much making something new with it. It's a lot of, it doesn't sound very glorious, but we're basically doing a lot of plumbing. That was already a bit the story with WebKit, but this is still the case with QtWebEngine. So most of the work, as I said, is plumbing. So we just put on our Mario costumes, because I know we have some Mario fans here in the room. So not quite literally like that, but basically we're doing a lot of plumbing in there. And so when you look at it from the user point of view, what you're going to get is those two, can we see up here, two modules in the API sense. There's like a widgets library that allows you to use web contents in a widgets application, and there's a QtQuick plugin. But most of the work is actually done in a private library that is used by those two fairly thin APIs, where we have Chrome as the black box, and that's where we're doing most of the plumbing. So this is something to give you an idea of how the pieces fit together. There's also an important point there. It's that compared to the WebKit days, where we had WebKit widgets, so based on WebKit 1, and the QtQuick 2 story was based on WebKit 2, we had very, very different code paths, and like quite big differences in behavior, potentially, in like the way things were working together. Here it's much more similar. What you get with widgets and what you get with QtQuick, as we're going to see a bit later, is extremely similar, to the point where widgets actually depends on QtQuick for the rendering. And then if you're wondering about this red little box, the WebEngine process, because we have a split process design, we have a very, very thin process launcher that just launches all the Chromium thing for a render process to spin out a separate render process. All right, let's see what it looks like in code. So gonna need to be here. For the widgets part, It's fairly conventional. We tried to build it after the QtQuick, the WebKit widgets API. So there are lots of similarities. We just had to rename the classes so that it wouldn't clash if you're using both side by side in the same application. The important part really is that you add the Qt plus equals WebEngine widget statement that will give you the include path, the linker flags and everything. And then you have a bunch of classes that are documented that are very similar to the ones that we had in QtWebKit. A little bit less in terms of functionality, and it's very straightforward to use. On the QTDD front, there is already a little catch. We need in QtQuick to have context sharing, and because WebEngine is loaded as a plugin, so unlike how it's done in widgets, we can't really tell the application upfront that it's going to need that special mode that is not the default way QtQuick works. So in order to use it, we made a little convenience wrapper called QtWebEngine initialize that you have to do before you do anything graphical, basically. So before anything shows up on screen, this has to be called, so that the shared context is going to be created ahead of time and then be used by the scene graph. And then how to use it is also fairly straightforward. We have a WebEngine view that has, at the moment, functionalities similar to what was available in WebKit 2. And yeah, basic properties for like the URL, some functions for going back and forth. So if can I actually show you the example? Yes. So first fun fact, if you do QML scene, you look at the help, there's this little disable context sharing flag. By default, QML scene is set to enable context sharing so that you can transparently run QML that uses WebEngine, but this is not the default for QtQuick. So that means I can do something like this, and I have a little, actually we can take a look at the little test.qml that I was showing on screen before. So it's really like that simple. And if things work out as expected, yeah, then it just loads something and you have a URL, and if I click on official partners, the URL property, the binding makes it update. So like basically everything just works the way you would expect it to with QtQuick. All right. So a little recap once again. Which one can you and should you use? I have a few scenarios in mind. The first thing I want to point out is that right now we still have a hard dependency on OpenGL, but recent work that's been done in QtQuick makes it now possible to use without a GPU. So we have this 2D renderer that I think is a commercial differentiator. And we're working on getting a software compositor in Chromium to work for us, so that you can use software all the way and you don't have a hard GL dependency anywhere. So if your main concern is porting of an existing QtWebKit app and you don't really have future plans with it, it's just really like a maintenance mode type of thing, you can do it with widgets. We tried to make that story compelling and easy enough. There will be missing features, and that's something we definitely want feedback on and try to see what we can do there. Porting QtQuick is going to be a bit more work, so it might not be what you want to do in that scenario. If you have something that is like an ongoing project and you want to move over for the long term over to QtWebEngine, you can move to widgets. I actually don't discourage you from doing that, because it's a good first step to just like see the technology and see like how the migration goes. I also encourage you to consider moving to QtQuick in terms of what it can do, how you can work with your UI and with QtQuick, separating the business logic and things like this. So we're seeing a lot of positive things with QtQuick in that respect. And then if you're starting a new project, we're not going to drop support for widgets or anything. So like you can, it's very legitimate to start something with widgets, but I would really recommend going with QtQuick instead if it's something completely new. Start getting used to it and getting familiar. If you've not used QtQuick before, this is a good opportunity, I think. All right, so now let's get to the integration part. How it is done, and also why it matters. You can find lots of different ways to put pegs into holes, but depending on the design you adopt and everything, it might not be that elegant and functional. So we tried to do something good there, and we actually had a tremendous opportunity. That was one of the reasons why the switch to Chromium was almost a no-brainer. And I'm going to show how it's done and how we do it. So I don't have huge web developer skills, but I wanted to show roughly why it matters. This is a very quick example that I wrote down. It's not something you will likely see in the real world, because I really hope people have better things to do with all the new HTML5 features. But it's there to just demonstrate the graphic side of things. So if I look at this file that I called flippin' cute logo, you can see it's using the CSS animations API. Not necessarily something you'll see again in like real life content, but the code paths that I want to highlight are roughly the same. The CSS transforms API is really nice to use for web development from my personal limited web development experience. And I think people are going to make more and more use of it with like transforms and the ability to have transitions on those. And this is something that browser engines have to work to support. And so this is something we also want to be able to support to the same level and have really nice performance and things working well. So if I run this with, I have a very simple test thing. If I run this in there, you can see like it's running in QML. Okay, I actually have something a bit more interesting. There is, so something you can do that's very interesting with Qt is grepping for QgetEnv in pretty much any module when you have the source. And there are lots of Easter eggs, and well, it's not Easter eggs in the traditional sense, but there are lots of really cool tricks that you can find that are usually based on relying on, oh, there's going to be this environment variable, and if you tweak it, you can get more debug output, you can get something. And so there is this QSG renderer debug. Can everybody see? QSG renderer debug environment variable, and if I set it to dump, when I run this application, you can see now that there are lots of nodes. It gives you all the scene graph nodes in the scene graph. So you can see that there are lots of transform nodes and geometry nodes, but basically there's just one web engine view. So what I can do is run with this quick test browser that we have that we use for manual testing, and we have some of the Chromium flags working, and some of them are really nice. This one show composited layer borders. So actually because the network is working, I have an even nicer demo to show that's a bit more maybe a bit more relevant for the type of content that you might encounter. And then what it shows you is those orange layers. So just the same way it would be around the new Qt logo, we have it around those images, and you can see that basically the engine is smart enough to determine those things are going to be moving and transformed. We know that this is going to be expensive if we try to re-render everything, so instead they promote it to their own layer. If you're familiar with web development, you've probably seen all those tricks that are documented about, oh yeah, just do translate Z0 or translate 3D 000 or something. So what it does, it promotes the element to its own layer, and essentially it just renders it to its own backing store. And then in the last step, we do compositing of those items instead of re-rendering with a different transform and then generating the new frame and having to put that on screen. It turns out we also have the ability to do that with the scene graph. So if we go back to the slides, the example looking like this with the logo, oh yeah, I just showed it with something else, but with the logo it would be roughly like this. So if you look at it from the perspective of how it is done in QtQuick, we have a bunch of QtQuick items for the controls and everything, and we have the web view that is one QtQuick item. And just in the same way, the QtQuick items for if you look at all those controls, they're not just one scene graph node, they're actually composite. Oh, interesting. They're actually composite. You have the background is going to be a rectangle. You're going to have some maybe some pix maps here and there for the line edit, for instance. The text turns into its own text node, or if you have a text edit, there might be actually a lot of text nodes. So just in the same way, what we want for our web engine view, the QtQuick item, is to be a composite of several scene graph nodes for all the potential layers or for our content in general. And that's where we got very lucky, and we had a match made in heaven here. Chromium sort of had the same problem. They had their UI for the Chrome, and they had the web content, and they were doing compositing of the web content, generating that frame, and then doing compositing of the UI together. And in order to get better performance and not do this work twice and have 2-pass compositing, which also means power savings potentially on Chromebooks and Android phones and things like this, they started working on a new approach that they called Compositor. So it's very fitting that it's in Berlin. I can try my German accent. I didn't come up with the name, but yeah, for some reason they found it fun. It's kind of fun. So, and this project, they started in 2013. So when we started working on QtWebEngine, we figured, okay, maybe we can tap into this and just use the output of all the work they've done. And instead of using the Chromium compositor as the last step, we could use the scene graph. And so this is work that's been pioneered and mostly done by Jocelyn, that you can see running around at this event. He's not in the talk right now because he's anchorman somewhere else. But yeah, he's our module maintainer, and so yeah, really, really cool work that he did there. And so I want to show you how it's done. I see that some people here like to read code, so I have some code to show. It's heavily simplified. I love to see diagrams, but at the same time, I know that after a while, after seeing the diagrams, I have a hard time mapping mentally where it's done and how it's done. So now I'm showing you the code that does what I just visually showed. So the big, or the main, one of the key classes that we're implemented in our core library is this render widget host view. So Qt, this is our implementation, but the render widget host view is one of the key classes in the contents API in Chromium. And in there, we have this virtual function called onSwapCompositorFrame. So this is something that comes to us from Chromium whenever they have a new frame ready, and they give us this CC compositor frame. So CC is the namespace for Chromium compositor. And so what matters here, I used a lot of ellipses to keep things simple. What really matters here is this this part where we actually take the part that we're interested in, so the delegated frame data. So we keep that, around, and then later, then we call update on our delegate, which is basically the graphical item either on the widgets front or on the QtQuick front. So it's going to call update for a widget or update for a QtQuick item. Actually, it's called the same. And that means in turn that API layer comes back to us in the core library with an update paint node call. So update paint node is the standard way if you have fiddled a bit with the scene graph classes and QtQuick item to make like custom QtQuick items. That's the standard way things work with the scene graph. If you haven't, it's all documented and it's really, really nice nice to use and play with, and you can get lots of things done with it. So basically what we get is the old node that was the root node for that item, and we have to return a pointer to a node. So the first time it's going to come to us with a null pointer, and we're going to create a new node, and we're going to say, okay, this is going to be a root node. In practice, then sometimes you can recycle most of the stuff. So here, what we do, we create a delegated frame node, which is one of our classes, and we basically commit the frame data that we just got on the swap compositor frame before to that frame node, and we pass it. You can see we pass it a handle to get the resources to release. So that in the next step we can actually get all the unused resources at that point and return them back to Chromium so that they can be recycled or deleted, freed properly, so that we don't really have to worry about it. So this is the part that's going to be interesting. What happens up here in commit, and then you can see in the next step we're going to post a task so that the resources to release can be returned to Chromium. So that happens in the send delegated frame ACK. So we acknowledge that we got our frame, and hey, by the way, this is now the stuff that we're not using anymore, so that you can use it and get it back to us again in the next frame, maybe. And so yeah, that's what happened in commit. So this is the big chunk. And I didn't want to have 10 slides. Maybe I should have. I don't know. But there's a lot happening in there, so I had to really trim it down to the maximum. So in the beginning, there's quite a bit of bookkeeping that I removed, and that's just symbolized by ... But basically, what we have to do in this function, I'm going to say what it does, and if you're really curious, you can have a look, because it's really big. What we have to do in this function is map the CC quads, which is the data structure that we get from Chromium. So we have to map those Chromium compositor quads to scene graph nodes, and the mapping is quite good. They use different terminology. They use sometimes different data structures, but in the end we want to do the same thing. So, and because we don't really have a way right now from Chromium to know exactly what changed, we have to go over our current subtree of scene graph nodes and just remove it entirely. But that's not that resource hungry. I'm going to reassure you right away. We have to remove it entirely and just rebuild it. We can't say, okay, there's just that transform that changed, so we're going to go and find it and just change it because we know by how much it changed. We don't have that. So we just remove everything and recreate it. So we have the root node, and then we're going to get some transform nodes so that we know, okay, there's going to be this. And then we get some of the nodes, so the one I wanted to highlight there. So we're iterating over a lot of things. And then when we get those render pass quads, so this is one of the interesting ones, we basically have a texture and a geometry, and we want to map that to a scene graph node, and that's going to be the texture, the web contents that's been rasterized by Chromium, and the geometry, well, it could be tiles, it could be a layer, so maybe there's a transform node before that, and we're appending that to that transform node. So what matters is that we get the texture from the texture ID that we had in the render pass. We fetch the texture from the resources that we have, and we set the geometry that the quad also holds, and we create a scene graph node from there. The ownership should be taken care of somewhere. I'm pretty sure it is, but I'm not sure if it's on the slide. And we just append it to our subtree, and so this way we're just building the subtree of scene graph nodes that will make up in the end our web contents. And at the very end, at the bottom, there's also, you know, a little ellipsis. At the very end, all the resources that we haven't used in this function, that we basically didn't need anymore, we return in the form of the resources to release up there. Yeah. All right, so that was the big aspect I wanted to emphasize on, because I think that's what matters, that's what we really worked on and we wanted to get right. There are some other aspects of integration. So one obvious one is that the API, actually, you don't have to know that there's Chromium underneath. The API just speaks Qt types. It's very apparent in the Widgets API. You know, you load with a QURL, you deal with QStrings and things like this. It's very familiar. In QtQuick, it's actually transparent. You're doing things in JavaScript. So for instance, if you do run JavaScript, it's going to run JavaScript in V8, come back to us. It's in another process, by the way. It's going to come back to us with a JavaScript value of some sort, and we're going to turn it into a QJS value for the Qt JavaScript engine, so for V4. And what happens in QtQuick is that you just do JavaScript, and it's like you were, you know, directly dealing with V8, but it's actually quite a big pipeline all the way. So, so this is part of the convenience and the way we want, you know, to provide a really nice integration. You're doing things with Qt, your web content, you just want to put in there, and it has to work. So that's what we're focusing on. And then there's Qt Web Channel. If you haven't seen the talk just before lunch in this room by Milian, I really encourage you to watch a rerun on YouTube whenever they're available. So we're fortunate enough to have Milian doing a tremendous work with Qt Web Channel, and I think it's a really neat piece of technology. What it does in one line, if you were in that talk, is basically allow you to expose arbitrary Q objects to a JavaScript context, also arbitrary. It could be on different machines at the other end of the world. It's very, very flexible, and that's the beauty of it. And the only thing it needs for that is a transport mechanism that can send messages and receive messages in the form of JSON objects. But yeah, that's not even something you have to worry about too much. And so the integration that we have right now for coming up with 5.4 is basic in the sense that you can use it with WebSockets, just like you would for any other browser, and it just works. But we have work in progress that didn't make the cut, but will be there for 5.5. A plan to basically have a transport mechanism directly over Chromium IPC, which will be hopefully a little bit more performant. It also has some security aspects to it, so it's preferable, and it's going to be a bit cleaner that way. All right, so I've talked about what we have a little bit, and I'm going to talk also about what's coming. And if you ask me, it's looking good. But then again, you know, the Norwegian weather report also says, hey, it's sunny, and I look out the window and sometimes it's raining actually really hard. So, so first things first, what do we have coming right now with 5.4? There's going to be a beta in the next 2 weeks or so. And with that, you will get QtWebEngine, the first binary packages available. You get a basic feature set that allows you to do most of the basic use cases covered. So you can build a simple web browser, you can build like an application that has fairly basic requirements in terms of how much you want, like how tight you want the integration with web contents. You also get a really good graphical integration, as I pointed out. One of the other advantages is that you get an up-to-date engine, which is not so much the case for QtWebKit anymore, and which is not necessarily the case for everything else. So this is based on Chromium 37, which was, up until very recently, the stable version of Chrome shipping out there. So time for us to branch off and release and everything. That's what we're based on. It supports, you know, all the modern features, and that's a really great asset. That means you can really trust that any web content you throw at it is going to be rendered properly. The features are going to be there. That's really nice. So I encourage you to try it out, see what it can do for you, see what's missing maybe, give us some feedback, and you can report bugs that you find, that you may find, on Jira. We have a web engine component there, and you can also contact us on the mailing list, so you can send messages if you have questions, if you have, you know, like feature requests or something, or you want to get involved with the development. Like, please, by any means, get in touch and come talk to us. There's also an IRC channel that I'll point out later. What's next? So in the near future, and the things that we already sort of started working on, or that we know that we have to work on in the next 6 months or so. So there's the software compositor that's already work in progress, and we're quite optimistic about this. It's looking good. The web channel integration is also something that we're quite positive that, yeah, it's going to work, and it's nice. It's actually kind of working already, but it's not in, so you can't really try it out. And there are also some invisible things. Like, we have to work a bit better on our test coverage. The tests are not even enabled right now for the continuous integration. So that might be a detail, but you know, it's like we have a bit of invisible work to do there, just so that we can keep moving forward after that. We also have some build system changes coming up, and by that I don't mean that we're going to switch to cubes, the Qt build system, but it's actually upstream. Chromium is switching from JIP to GN, Generate Ninja. So it shouldn't affect you, but it's actually going to affect us. We're going to have a bit of work to do to switch to the new thing as well. And then longer term, and ideas floating around, I just have a few things, but there are lots of things that, like, ideas we had in the air. I don't want to put them all there because it's not necessarily suited. One thing that I can think of is user scripts. We don't have a really good story for user scripts, and I think we could have something to allow a bit tighter. Like, right now you can do run JavaScript, but still the timing is going to be problematic. You don't know, like, because of the asynchronous nature of things, you can't like register a script that's going to be running each time, you know, at a specific point on load or something. So this is something we'd like to address and come up with like a bit more powerful API, because we want to encourage the use of JavaScript for a lot of things. Pepper API support, because we hear that you all want some form of plugin one way or another. So Chromium dropped NP API support, but there's still Pepper API. So this is something we could look into and see if that fits the needs of most people. And then I put place your contribution there, because I'm sure you have lots of ideas of things to be done. Maybe you even started doing them. So we're happy to hear about it. Just talk to us. Even if you have like some feedback on what you would like to know more about in QtWebEngine for talks for the next years, like anything. Yeah, we're really desperate for feedback. We've been spending more than a year working kind of on our own. Now we need to be interacting a bit more with people. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much. So if you have any questions, we have a microphone. Yes.
You said before that it's not the main goal of QtWebEngine to provide a web runtime, but then again there's a QtWeb channel which basically enables one to develop the front end in HTML and CSS and to expose the C++ objects. Do you plan more support for that, like custom URL schemes and maybe WebGL support and other things that would enable like sandboxing for web plugins maybe, or something like a web runtime, or is that like totally out of focus?
So I can't say it's out of the question. It's not really the primary use case that we're after. That being said, yeah, you pointed out we have web channel support, and we actually see lots of reasons to have it. It doesn't mean that your whole UI is going to be in HTML. It could also be a way of exposing some of the things that are not available yet in HTML5 to your third-party applications, on an embedded device. Typically, if you're after device creation, you might have some of your third-party application story could be web apps, and then you probably want to expose some specific functionality to your device, and QtWeb channel would be a great way to solve that problem. For custom URL schemes, it's feasible. We just didn't do it yet, but it's one of the possibilities. We don't expose QNetwork Access Manager like that was the case in WebKit 1, and lots of things were possible with QNAM that are not possible directly anymore. So custom schemes was one of them, and this is something we actually could revive. We're just not sure yet in what form and if there's a big demand for it, so we'll have to evaluate.
Okay, thanks.
Is it true that the QtWebEngine will be under LGPL3 license?
Yeah, it already is. The headers were changed in August or something. Like when we announced, basically, we did the license change right away. So it's like everything that's been happening since when it was announced, basically, as LGPL v3. Like the whole module was switched. So.
How long will QtWebKit will be around?
The elephant in the room. So actually, no, the will be around question I can answer very accurately by saying until the release of Qt 6, because we can't take it out. That would be breaking source compatibility and binary compatibility. We can only do that for Qt 6. How long it's going to be, it's most likely it's on its way to deprecation, if I'm being really honest, and it's most likely going to be a problem if you use it in production at some point, because it's not getting that many updates. So what we're thinking of doing is security updates and all those critical things, but it doesn't mean that that's enough, because the web content is rapidly evolving, the web is rapidly evolving as such. So if you're loading arbitrary content, if it's not just your HTML UI, then there's no guarantee that things are going to keep working. They're going to unprefix some things, people are going to stop using them out there, and then things will be broken, and you'll have like a broken web. So probably, don't expect to keep running on this for years and years.
Is there any printing support in QtWebEngine?
Not currently. This is something that could be done, as far as I can tell, but we haven't gotten around to doing it yet. So yeah, if there's demand, I mean, this is one of the things that we probably have to do. It's some plumbing somewhere.
So what's the gain of using QtWebEngine over QtWebKit? Is it any better in terms of graphic performance?
Yeah, so the main gain that I wanted to highlight was the really tight scene graph integration, and it just gives you, a one-pass compositing of your web content and all the QtQuick UI. So this is something that we never could reach with WebKit, and this is something that we now have. So it's already like a big gain in terms of graphics performance and graphics integration. The other gains that you have as a side effect of the fact that it's using Chromium, so you get a split process architecture that's really sound, something we kind of had with WebKit 2, but we had other problems there. You get a really up-to-date like up-to-date web feature support. So you don't have those pages that all of a sudden are broken and you don't know why. And, oh yeah, it's using this kind of new feature, and well, it's not really well supported. That doesn't happen because effectively what we're doing is just taking all the stuff that is in Chromium and doing the plumbing only on one side, whereas WebKit was also deep down was going back to QPainter and QFont and everything, and there were all sorts of like slight behavior differences or features not yet implemented or things like this. So you get basically those two things, and I think there's a big value in there. Any more questions? Nope. Okay, thank you very much. Question? Yeah, we can. All right, we'll take it offline. Thank you.